Faith-filled families. What family is not? For all the good things that can be said, both from a societal and biblical perspective about family, getting married and having children is not mandatory. Marriage is good and is from God, but it is optional. Because of the lifelong commitment that marriage is, with only one allowance of a reason for divorce, namely sexual immorality on the part of the spouse, Jesus' followers floated the idea that perhaps it is better not to marry, Matthew 19, verse 10. Jesus said, "There are eunuchs, in other words, those who do not have sexual relations, who have been so from birth, and there are eunuchs who have been made eunuchs by men, and there are eunuchs who have made themselves eunuchs for the sake of the kingdom of heaven. Let the one who is able to receive this receive it." Matthew 19:12. The Apostle Paul was in that last category, choosing not to marry and to instead focus on his service to God. He even wrote, "I wish that all were as I myself am," 1 Corinthians 7:7. But generally speaking, as God said in the beginning, it is not good that the man should be alone. Genesis 2:18. Paul himself admits that celibacy is not practical for most people, and he commends marriage. Because of the temptation to sexual immorality, each man should have his own wife and each woman her own husband. 1 Corinthians 7:2. Secondly, family relationships, judging from what we know about marriage, are not forever. Jesus teaches that in the resurrection they neither marry nor are given in marriage. Matthew 22:30. Even the Jews who didn't believe in the afterlife, those who disingenuously asked Jesus the question that prompted this statement, recognized that when a spouse dies, the one left here can marry again without committing adultery. As under the law of Moses, the New Testament also teaches that a married woman is bound by law to her husband while he lives. But if her husband dies, she is free from that law, and if she marries another man, she is not an adulteress. Romans 7, verses 2 and 3. Simply stated, death ends a marriage. Next, family is not simply a playground, a place only for rest and relaxation. The home should be a haven, a place of escape from the world's stress and problems. But a married couple who have children have a special and God-given mission to raise their children in the way of the Lord. Fathers, bring them up in the discipline and instruction of the Lord. Ephesians 6:4. Parents should lead their children to have faith, filling their homes with talk of God, His kingdom, and His righteousness. When addressing married couples, the prophet Malachi poses a rhetorical question about how God arranged marriage, with one man and one woman becoming one flesh for life, and then explains one of God's goals for that arrangement. Did He not make them one, with a portion of the Spirit in their union? And what was the one God seeking? Godly offspring. Malachi 2:15. Lastly, family is not a guarantee of salvation. Even being a member of a faithful family does not mean that you will share the other's faith. It's up to each person in each generation to seek Him. Said another way, God has no grandchildren. Your children will not automatically adopt your beliefs. That's the reason behind all the instructions to teach our children. Each child will have to learn God's will, make the faith his or her own, and live it out in his or her daily life. In the lesson, Sin and Its Consequences, we pointed out from Ezekiel's writings that the guilt of my sin does not stain my children. The soul who sins shall die. But that same passage teaches that my righteousness is not accounted to my children either. The righteousness of the righteous shall be upon himself. Ezekiel 18, verse 20. In that chapter, we have an example of 3 generations in one family, each being spared or punished by God based on his or her own actions. The Apostle Paul exhorts us to take our individual responsibility to heart and to act accordingly. My beloved, as you have always obeyed, so now, not only as in my presence, but much more in my absence, work out your own salvation with fear and trembling, for it is God who works in you, both to will and to work for His good pleasure. Philippians 2:12-13. To review, Getting married and having children is not mandatory, and it's not forever. It's not a playground, and it's no guarantee of salvation. But it is wise to marry, and family does constitute one of your biggest responsibilities on earth, especially to teach your children, and can be a wonderful blessing in your life. May you take hold of the salvation that God offers, and if God grants you a spouse and children, may you be an example to them of godly fear and obedience, either in spite of or hopefully because of your parents. May God bless you with a faith-filled family.